like, if I'm not writing or if I'm not doing the thing that I said I was going to do, why am I not doing it? And most of the times it's an emotion that needs to be acknowledged and explored and tended to. And so really that's the holistic way of a support squad. It's not just your BFFs. It's not just your coaches and mentors. It's really the whole picture of having that support. And I think when we're operating at this high level of ambition, creativity, output, double duty of business and home life, we need a lot of support mechanisms in place to hold us as we grow.
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renee Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. My next guest is a best-selling author, business coach, international keynote speaker, TEDx presenter, poet, and the host of Lead with Love podcast. She's the author of She Builds, the anti-hustle guide to grow your business and nourish your life. She's also the co-author of the best-selling book, Simple Green Smoothies, where over 1 million people have embraced this simple and healthy habit. This week, Jadah and I chat about all things avoiding the hustle culture, how to get over expectations, and creating the perfect week. Please welcome the incredibly talented Jadah Sellner.
Thank you for having me, Renee. I'm so happy that we get to connect and catch up in this way. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And you were like my lifeline for some things I was going through in business years ago. I remember walking around outside a public library in our town on the East Coast, and we were chatting, and you just helped provide so much clarity. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So let's dive into some quick questions. Gives the audience a chance to get to know you quicker before we dive into the guts of your incredible book that has just been released. And for those of you tuning in, her hat, her shirt, everything matches. And I love this. It's so you. I'd love to know, where are you from?
Yeah, so that's a very big answer. My first, I want to say, is I didn't grow up in a military family. That's a question that a lot of people ask me, but I have never gone to the same school more than 2 years in my whole life. So I was born in Sacramento, California, and I spent my early elementary school years in the San Francisco Bay Area. There was also a stint in Texas. And then for middle school, I lived in South Florida, so in Miami and then Coral Springs. And then high school, I went to the Performing Arts Academy in Las Vegas. And then once I graduated high school a year early, I moved to Los Angeles. And that's actually where I met my husband, where we had our baby Zoe. And when she was 13 months old, we moved to Kauai.
You just don't like snow.
Yeah. It's all very warm. Actually, I love snow. I love like cozy winter, but we're back in Northern California now. So it's like a bit of a full circle moment of where I started. So I guess I could say now from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And I'm just 25 miles east of San Francisco.
I love SF. Yeah, I get the coziness of winter. And I always say winter should end December 26th because it makes sense to have it for Christmas. But then after that, it should be over. Spring should happen.
Yeah. Which is kind of a little bit California. We get a faux fall, a faux winter. It's just enough to wear coats and scarves, but you don't have to. And you can still wear your cute boots and all of that stuff and all the layers.
Yeah, I feel like San Francisco is just a perpetual fall day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it rains, sometimes it gets cold, and sometimes like bone chilling cold. I remember one time I was there in July, and this is like, if you don't know anything about California, you just assume it's like beaches and hot weather.
Yeah.
And it was like mid-July and we were going back to the east coast of Canada and I was wearing my winter coat in the Mission in San Francisco because it was so cold. Mind you, it was like 100 degrees back on the east coast.
Yeah.
People were like in the bikinis on the beach.
Yeah. And it's interesting because where I live with only 25 miles east of San Francisco, it could be 30 degrees warmer where we are, just on the other side of the bridge and a tunnel. So we're mostly clear blue skies, lots of sun, and we can get in the low hundreds out here. So that doesn't happen in San Francisco for sure.
No, because of the fog. Yeah, it's just an interesting climate. What was one of the toughest moments you had to face as an entrepreneur?
Well, I talk about this in the opening of my book, She Builds, which is the anti-hustle guide to grow your business and nourish your life. And I definitely go into more description of it inside the book, but my husband, daughter, and I, we opened a brick and mortar business in 2008, 2009, right when the recession was happening, because I really became an entrepreneur out of necessity because nobody was hiring at that time. And so we had a house that we were renting on the island of Kauai. And then we opened up a play and learning center for kids because we were trying to meet the need of the community at that time. And things got so hard, so rough financially. My husband and I were fighting over money that we didn't have, but we had to move into our playhouse because we couldn't afford to pay for our house rent as well as our business lease. And that's one of those times when you just got to get resilient and scrappy and resourceful and just make ends meet. So we really held on to that business as long as we could. But that was definitely one of those moments of needing to close a business down, liquidate all of your equipment, and then you start over. And my husband, daughter, and I moved into my husband's parents' house. So hashtag worst case scenario, living, with your in-laws in this like full house with your kid. And at that time, my husband was in his 30s. I was in my late 20s, and just really trying to, how do you redefine yourself in those seasons when things don't work out as planned, and needing to be humble and receive support and help. And even that is a privilege that we were even able to move in with the in-laws, because not everyone has those resources available to them. But that was definitely a dip moment for us on the entrepreneur. And that was our first business. So congratulations to us. We went through a very tough season and then had to rebuild and reimagine, because I knew I wanted to continue to be an entrepreneur. It didn't sway me from running my own business. I just needed to build in a new way.
Like, we are built different, because you can just be like kicked down, shoved down, kicked while you're down. And you're like, I'm still doing this.
Yeah.
And people looking at you like you're crazy. What? No, I'm still doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a different something in our DNA.
So are you saying that you would just surrender and be like, nope, this isn't for me?
I would. No, I'd keep going.
Yeah.
There's been so many moments that I was like, oh, maybe it's just easier to just throw in the towel. No one gets hurt. Everyone gets paid. And then we just move on. But when there's a bigger why behind all of it, it just drives you.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'll just get kicked out again. But you know what? I know better next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have those lessons to kind of guide you and support you. So tell us, what is your favorite quote?
Yeah, so I'm a quote collector, but I wanted to share a recent one that I've been sitting with that a couple of my friends, different friend circles, have been reflecting back to me. And it is, and I think this is a book title by Robin L. Posen. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but go only as fast as your slowest part feels safe to go. And I feel that when we are in these seasons of uncertainty and the unknown, and I think it's harder for people to dream and plan when so much of foundation has been shaken up and you're just like, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, that we have to sit in these decisions, but also we can't accelerate clarity. We can definitely have tools and practices and strategies that help us, but sometimes you just have to sit with the unknown. And something that I talk about in the book is giving ourselves permission to be a slow cooker instead of a pressure cooker. So I don't know if you all have like appliances at home, but a pressure cooker, which we have one, is very complicated. There's a lot of buttons, a lot of options. There's a burn notice that goes off when you're cooking, and then you have to release the steam, right? And that steam is so intense. We're putting like a towel over it to cover it just, blowing up. But you get this amazing meal in less than an hour, very quick, and it's a nourishing meal. And then there's the slow cooker, which I love, which you have two options. So you want 4 hours or 8 hours
or 12 hours.
Yeah. And then you just walk away and you let things simmer, and you're not pressing all these different buttons and things, and you get the same result. You still have a nourishing meal at the end of that time. And so I have really stepped into embracing in my business, in my life, giving myself permission to be a slow cooker, that not everything has to be so rushed, so quick, that we can give ourselves a lot more spaciousness and letting things simmer. The creative process, things need to simmer. And so I've been really leaning into that. I can only move as fast as the slowest part of me feels safe to go.
I love that. And the thing about a slow cooker too, is it fills your house with that smell all day long.
Yes, I've made mulled wine in a slow cooker and just letting all of the oranges and the cinnamon stick and the cloves and all of that thing. Yeah, that's a great winter one. Although I haven't been drinking alcohol for almost 3 years, which is wild. So
good.
I haven't had mulled wine in a while.
You can mull a non-alcoholic wine. There's like a huge line of all that stuff.
Ooh, I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. No, but I love that too, because I just remember not that long ago, our entire culture around starting a business was like, go, 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 work 80-hour weeks. You can only be successful if you do that. But if you really looked at what you were doing, it's like half of the work you were working on was just the work to be busy.
Yeah.
To say that you were doing something, but wasn't actually moving the needle.
Yeah. And I think that's an important piece, right? For us to get clear, what are those things that move the needle? And it's also a part of experimentation too, which we don't give ourselves enough, like, oh, not everything is going to work out the way that it needs to. But I think it's really important for us to create that space and be more iterative and allow ourselves to do a retrospective, like what's working, what's not working, what might I do differently, and being able to reassess and double down on what's working and stop what's not.
Yes. And be okay to give up the things that aren't working.
Yes, that's the hard part for a lot of people, is to give up the things that aren't working. I actually talk about this of us being in the fear cycle where we are forcing, we're exerting, we're working extra hard, we're just pushing and grinding and all of these pieces, which then leads us to exhaustion. Yeah. And we're feeling depleted, tired, overwhelmed, burnt out. And when we're in that place, what do? We start to hide. And so we go into avoidance. We're procrastinating, we're hiding under the covers, watching shows, just binge watching. And then we move into rigidity, which is getting stuck, not letting go. Like, I made this plan. I said this is what I was going to do, so I'm going to do it. I started this business. Everyone knows this is what I'm committed to. And we hold on longer than we should. And that's the cycle of fear, FEAR, forcing, exhaustion, avoidance, and rigidity. And the way that I organized She Builds is through the framework of to build with love, LOVE.
Yeah, this is like the first chapter, right?
Yes.
Because that's where I am. I love it. And it reminds me of, so have you heard of the program 75 Hard?
Yes, I've seen it on social media. I feel like I've seen some social shares of it for sure.
Probably. That's what people do when they're doing it. So there's the Live Hard year. So there's an entire year of this. But you start by doing 75 hard. So it's 75 days in a row. You have to do like 2 workouts. One has to be outside, drink a gallon of water. And there's these criteria to follow. And then you go into phase 1, which is 30 days, which is all that plus a 5-minute cold shower and like morning pages and something else. And then you have to go into another phase in order to complete this Live Hard year. And I wrote that as an annual goal. I'm going to complete the Live Hard year in 2022. Or it was like September to September. So it was like 2021 to 2022. But after phase 1, because it took me an extra 17 hours a week just to get through the daily checklist, right?
Wow.
And I'm like, where is this taking me away? I didn't need to do this program for mental toughness. I'm pretty tough. I didn't need to lose weight because I am fine. I love my body the way it is, healthy. So I'm like, why am I doing this? So when I reflected back on that, I was like, oh, I'm just doing this to impress other people, to make them think I'm tough, but I already know I am.
Yeah.
In the moment, I was like, why am I not doing this for myself? This is stupid. It's actually pulling me further away from the other goals I had on my list, which was compete at a CrossFit competition. So I'm like, I'm not doing this. And I announced it to the world. I'm not doing this. It does not align with my goals and whatever. And they're like, oh my God, but like, why would you stop doing this? I got applauded. I got applauded more than I got people being like, oh, she gives up too easy.
Yeah.
I got applauded because I was out of integrity. It was like, this is not serving me. It's taking me away from my family. I am so grouchy. Like, give me a chocolate bar already. Like, I want to eat sugar, right? It's almost like giving yourself the permission to just realize that maybe something you started isn't going to work. Yes. Or it's making you unhealthy mentally, physically, or it's taking you away from your kids, and be confident enough to be okay with just stopping it. Literally just stop. Delete.
Yeah.
Not doing it anymore.
Giving ourselves permission to rest, not quit. And you're giving yourself permission to like, wait, is this pulling me closer to my vision or is it pulling me further away from it? And that's a great way for us to assess if something's working. Like I could see the headline, I quit 70-day hard, like all of the things, because we do have to give ourselves permission to quit things and let go of things that are no longer working. But it's having that self-awareness and courage to tune in, not to what society is saying is important, but what is truly important to you. So I love that you did that. It's a really powerful story.
Yeah, me too. And I still completed part of it, which was like, now you can ask me, how was it? And it's like, great, depending on what your goal is.
Yeah.
Right. Not just because it's a fad, not just because so-and-so says, well, you're only tough if you do this. Like, it's almost like saying you're only tough if you're a Marine. Yeah. I'm like, dude, have you had a baby? Like,
right.
Do you know what that feels like?
Yeah.
Like toughness, I don't know. To me, it's self-defined.
It is self-defined. I love that. It's so true. And that's something I talk about is being able to define your enough number. Like what is enough for you? And it doesn't need to slow down or dampen your ambition. It's just getting really honest of what do you need to survive, to thrive, and really take care of your family and your livelihood. And then when we know our enough number of like, how much do we want to make? How many hours do we want to work in a week? Then it's easier for us to say yes or no to opportunities, or also not hustle just for the sake of hustling. Because I think part of hustle culture gets us into this place where we set a goal and we're ambitious women. So we make things happen. And then what happens when we arrive at that goal is we just move the goalpost a little bit further away. So it goes from, I just want enough just to replace my 9-to-5. Okay, now I want a 6-figure business. Now I want to double. I want multiple 6 figures. Now let's make the big leap to 7 figures, 8 figures. Like it's just, there's this constant chase for more. And it's not to say that that is a bad way to go, but if that's not truly aligned with how you want to be spending your time and energy, not everyone wants to build a unicorn company with $1 billion valuation. Some of us just want enough money so that we can travel, so that we can play, so that we can take care of ourselves, spend time with our family, our friends, and that's enough. And that's okay. And that doesn't make you not a real entrepreneur, because those are the questions that happen when we get indoctrinated with that hustle culture messaging is if we're not working those 80-hour work weeks, then we feel like we are wrong. We're doing it wrong. We're not making enough. We're not spending enough time. And then we start to feel lazy and guilty and the shame spiral. And then we tap out. We're like, I can't do it. I guess I'm not capable. I don't want women tapping out of building meaningful businesses and their body of work in the world. I think it's really important for us to be leaders in our companies and in our lives. And so I wanted to create something that gave us permission to build our way. And it's a little bit differently than maybe how we see what's being celebrated in the media.
Yeah, but arguably better. Now we're like protecting people's mental health and physical health because that's coming first.
Yes.
Because here's the thing, if you believe in abundance, money can be made whenever, wherever, however much you want, and it's accessible to everybody. That's like a very feminine approach, but we definitely need that in the business.
Yeah. We can't just like hope and wish and manifest all the things. Yeah. There is effort and work, but you can also create ease and flow in how you approach your work, and also boundaries around your time and your availability of what you're saying yes and no to. So I think more than anything, it's being able to integrate the masculine and the feminine into how we grow and build, so that we're honoring our whole lives, our whole selves, not just compartmentalized business self and like scale by any means necessary, even at the expense of your mental health and physical well-being.
Wow. It is already 2023. How exciting is this? I am sure you are fired up for this new week and this new year, because, we're on the other side of this crazy thing called the pandemic. And at least I'm hopeful about that. And 2022 was a great year from my lens in terms of the development and the changes that we've seen, in our community, throughout our communities, especially more women becoming entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, or feeling this entrepreneurial drive to grow their business. And let me tell you, because that's one of my missions, is to see more women start the business of their dreams. One of the things that excites me the most is when I see these women, my clients, women within the community, actually getting the media attention they deserve. You may have heard this from me before, but I am a recovering PR agency owner, and I still love the space. I love PR. I love creative writing. I love coming up with pitches and angles and connecting with new people and really understanding my clients' brand messages, needs, and getting them out for the world to see. Maybe this sounds like you. See, the thing about getting media attention is that it doesn't have to be difficult. You just need to work with an experienced publicist and develop a scalable system to get into the dream publications. And that's what my program, Sidelines to Headlines, is all about. This is a done with you, done for you program, as in we work together collaboratively on creating pitches and angles, but I do all the pitching. And I work with women like you who actually want to get consistent media coverage time and time again without doing all the heavy lifting. Because the thing about PR is not that it's hard to do. It's just that it takes a lot of time and dedication. There's the creating the angles, the pitching, the following up, the yada yada. You can find all this stuff if you Google how to do PR. But the reality is, if you work with somebody who has this experience, who wrote the book about it, me, then things happen a lot faster and it's a lot more fun. With hundreds of media wins under my belt, I've gotten clients on the Steve Harvey Show, Forbes, Wired, and the top podcasts. I've written the book about it called Get Covered, and I know how vital PR is to small businesses. I wanted to bring this method to women-led businesses like yours to help you kickstart your media campaigns without paying the absurd agency prices. Listen, we used to charge upwards to $25,000 US a month to work with clients, and I don't charge that. I know how to do that type of work, but I do it for way, way, way less. But money aside, because money is abundant, we can make money. Time is of the essence. And this is where you get your time back, is I do the work and I pitch you and your business and you get the media coverage of your dreams. How does that sound? If you're interested, head on over to wewildwomen.com/sidelines to headlines. That's wewildwomen.com/sidelines to headlines to check out my all new incredible PR program. I work with you. We'll have a fun time. Hope to see you there. Let's be realistic too about timelines. I remember there's a company that some lady pitched me to have her client on my show. And it was a great pitch. And they're like, over COVID, she built a business from $100,000 a year to like 8 million in less than a year. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm not an idiot. It's not like she just woke up one day and just started by herself. There's something here that's a little bit weird.
Right.
And if it is the case, she's not the guest I want on my show, because she would be the opposite of what you're teaching us today. Get up and just burn the midnight oil every single day. Who cares about your kids or your husband or your dog or whatever? Like, don't trouble the driveway.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like timelines, you talk about the slow cooker, which I love, is like, if you want to build $1 million business, that's great. What's the priority? Is $1 million or creating a sustainable business that you can be happy, healthy with your family or people that matter and still eventually get to $1 million? It might take a few years.
Yes.
But give it the space to take a few years.
Yeah. I love that you say that. I'm always saying, don't put a timeline on your dreams. Put a timeline on your actions. There's things that are in your control and you know what you want and why you want it. But the when and how, those are the variables that we don't always have all the control around. But if we allow ourselves that spaciousness to extend the timeline, to ask for more time. I even did that in my book writing process. I share a story of how I was writing Simple Green Smoothies and didn't sleep for over 24 hours to make the deadline. And I knew with this book, I had to write it the anti-hustle way. And I'm like, I'm not going to make the deadline and I'm not going to stay up for over 24 hours and be on caffeine to hit it. So I had to ask for more time, knowing that I'm going to disappoint my editors. I'm going to disappoint the publishing house that I didn't get it in by the time, but I needed that in order to write this book in the anti-hustle way. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of really looking at that difference. This book was supposed to come out in May of 2022. It came out in November because of that, extending the timeline and allowing the book to simmer. I'll also share in my writing process something that I noticed. I was trying to shame myself into being a writer. Like the male-dominated messaging of being a writer is you get your butt in the seat every single day, the same time, and you write X amount of words. Just stay there and you'll have a finished book. I did that for 4 months with She Builds and I got nowhere. I was writing 1,000+ words a day, feeling like I was making progress, but I didn't feel immersed or connected to the work. And my life coach, Rebecca McLaughlin, she was like, and I was about to ask for another extension on my timeline of like, I'm not going to make it. I don't have all the words. And she's like, what if, and I think I was 3 weeks away from my deadline. She's like, I think you can actually finish this book. What if you book a hotel retreat for the next 3 weeks, 3 to 4 nights at a time, come home, be with your family, and then immerse yourself in the book. And I got excited and lit up about that of like, ooh, a little love affair, a little escapade with my book. And it was so beautiful. I was going to wine country. I was going to Sausalito, California, just really beautiful, inspiring spaces. And I just allowed myself to be an immersive creator and write my book. I made the deadline and I enjoyed the process. I wrote that the majority of my first draft of the book in just 3 weeks, where most people are telling me to just sit down, write every single day at 6 a.m., 1,000 words a day, whatever it is. And that wasn't working for me. So I had to find another way. But I thought to be a true author, if I'm a real writer, then I need to do it in that way. And that wasn't working for me. I actually had to really allow myself to immerse myself in the book writing process. And now I look forward to writing another book, where before I was like, I don't want to write. I'll hire a ghostwriter. I'll do, all of those things. So really finding a creative process that works for you. And some people, the daily writing might be what works for their life and for their creative process. It wasn't for me. And I had to unhook myself from that pattern and messaging that's what makes a real writer.
Oh, I think doesn't Ernest Hemingway, Maya Angelou, doesn't they rent hotel rooms and to extract yourself from that environment because you have these triggers and influences. Yeah. And really good writers, they can actually, Cal Newport can just sit down and just bang stuff out. That's great. But there's also this thing, even Todd Herman talks about that, what's it called? When you're transitioning from one task to another that actually requires
the context switching.
Context switching, right. Yeah. It takes 27 minutes to get into that state again. You're like, oh, got to go into the door because UPS arrived.
Yes.
30 minutes lost.
Yeah.
So it's so smart of you to do that. And I've done it before when I used to have my agency and we were writing a lot of content for ourselves and our clients. I would just book hotel rooms for a couple nights and just go and get so much great work done.
Yeah.
And be by myself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for those of us who have more caregiving responsibilities, if you're a mama or caregiving for elders, there's something about removing yourself from that day-to-day environment. Like you said, there's those triggers and there's this escape from those responsibilities to really go in your zone. And I took such good care of myself. I was drinking green juices. I was dancing. I was soaking in the hot tub and hanging out in my robe and typing. Nice. And it was just very spacious and very nourishing at the same time.
I'm the kind of person that checks into a hotel room and goes right for the robe.
Yeah.
Takes all my clothes off and I put the robe on and I jump into bed.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. I get it. I'm like there with you. I totally envision this. And so you wrote this book and you crushed it and you had a successful company with Simple Green Smoothies. You have a lot of stuff that you built over the course of your career and you're just a phenomenal, fabulous woman. People love to know kind of like what does your day look like? What does your week look like? Tell me, what's the secret? I'd love to know, how do you organize your week so that you don't feel so overwhelmed?
A process that's been really helpful for me is creating a weekly workflow plan. So being able to really track how I'm spending my time on a day-to-day basis. I do this with my clients as well, of tracking where is the context switching even happening, right? Because you can start to see patterns of all the things that need to get done to run your business, to also run your life. And from there, I then do an energy audit where I'm looking at what of these activities energized me, which of these drained my energy, and which are kind of neutral. And so I start to figure out, what are these pieces that are essential? What needs to stay on my plate? What could I delegate? What could I get off? And then redesigning that through the weekly workflow where I theme out my days. So for me, I have like my money making Mondays. That's when I have my team meeting. I used to do team meetings on Tuesdays, and I realized that Mondays would become a second Sunday where I would just like, oh, I don't have that external accountability. Because something that's beautiful is that when we're our own bosses, we can create our schedule, but also sometimes we can be horrible bosses to ourselves too at the same time. So that's when I'm doing all of my revenue generating activities, the things that might scare me, but I know is going to have a direct correlation to my bottom line and revenue growth. So I try to start that at the start of my week. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays are my talkie days. So that's when I am doing my client coaching calls. It's when I'm doing podcast interviews on my podcast, Lead with Love, or showing up on other podcasts. And then Wednesdays are like, I call WINS days. And that's when I'm working on my very important projects, my VIPs. And so I look at my strategic quarterly plan. What are my priorities that are important, but they're not urgent? So that's a day where I don't have any calls scheduled to really focus on the growth, the things that move the needle in my business, to work on those on Wednesdays. And then Fridays are kind of like my free flow. Some days, like this Friday, I'm doing a mastermind with a Bay Area, our mutual friend who's been on your podcast, Jennifer Kim. She will be there. So there's 5 of us that meet once a quarter. We go all day and just strategize and share and have our hot seats. And sometimes I might be closing up on a project from the work week, or I'm meeting my husband for a day date and, meet up for lunch or something like that. So that's kind of like dealer's choice. And then Saturdays and Sundays are very unstructured. Those are the sacred days for me to rest, to play with my family. And for me, I don't know if this is for you, but it's easier for me to lean towards work than my family life. So my natural pull is to where I have a lot of like passion and get a lot of feedback, right? You're doing amazing. Where you're at home, it's like, can you do the dishes? Can you make this quesadilla or whatever it is?
I'm hungry.
Yes. So for me, I actually have to schedule time for friends, time for my family. Like I need those as anchors in my calendar. Otherwise, it could be really easy for my work to overflow around that. And I think some women who are ambitious can have a little bit of shame or guilt around that of like, oh, why isn't that as easy? And some people lean on the other side of the pendulum and they're like more into their family, the domestic life, caregiving, and they're a little bit more distracted on the business side. And so you need to schedule more of those things in your calendar and then let life surround and kind of overflow around that. So that's just something to kind of have that self-awareness of where does your focus tend to draw to naturally without any effort, and then schedule the things that may be a little bit harder for you to show up for.
Yes. And what I've learned over the years too are these micro moments with kids. So if you have younger kids, they have shorter attention spans, but really the most important thing for them is that when you're with them, you're present. So it could be a 5-minute thing here, 20 minutes there, and it fills their love tank because their love tanks are just little tiny things. So they're easily filled. My son Noah, the other night, he wanted to play a game of Clue, which we did, and then make protein balls, which we did. And right, that alone took 30, 45 minutes. And it was so much fun. Obviously, I don't wake up that morning being like, I want to make protein balls and play a game of Clue. But it was that for him, it was everything. Yeah. And like his love tank was overflowing because it was one-on-one time. And then Max wanted me to help him build this structure for his cars and stuff. And I did that. And so when we think about these moments too, it's like, well, I don't really want to do this, but I do as a mother to be with them, to just know that they're loved. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. Yeah. Because I'm like you, I'm like gravitate towards work. Yeah. Because like, I know where I can win at work. Yeah. When it's parenting, I'm like, questionable. Like, was this good or bad?
Yeah. And I love that it's also scheduling that time. Like this week is finals week for Zoe. She's in 10th grade right now and she will get test anxiety and just, so the way that I scheduled my work week this week, I'm actually recording calls Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before my mastermind on Friday. And I'm ending my work day when she gets out of school because she's getting out early at 1 instead of like later at like 3 something, because I want to energetically and physically be present. So when she is crashing at home, I can just emotionally hold space for her. Okay. What does she need? Does she need a snack? Does she need to vent? Whatever that is, to really be present for her. So I think that's a great thing for me to share is you create a weekly workflow plan of how the focus of your days, but it's flexible and fluid. You can shift it and change it based on what's happening in your life. And so for me, I shifted my schedule where I'm having talkie Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so that I can be done with my workday by 1 p.m. and go home with my daughter. Her school is walking distance from my office that I rent outside of my home, and go home with her and just be there and attend to her needs in that way.
So important. I love that. That's the luxury of entrepreneurship for the most part, is that fluidity in our calendar. I don't schedule reoccurring calls on Mondays or Fridays. Mondays tend to be like my house nugget days. It's like complete my passport renewal things, like something for the kids. Or Max needs an extra pair of pants and stuff that require my time. Tend to do on Mondays because then it just eases me back into the week, which I love.
Yeah, I love that.
And then Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursdays are more hyper-focused on like coaching calls, sales calls, whatever it is. But I know that, which also allows me to know in terms of working out, nutrition, shouldn't be going out late on those evenings, like no late night dinners with friends because I need to be on my game the next day.
Yeah.
And that stuff you can shift around as well.
Yeah.
But creating that fluidity in your own calendar is kind of a blessed thing.
Oh yeah. And I'll add that as far as the movement too. That's another thing that's harder for me. So I have to schedule that, and I bring in social accountability where I have the date in my calendar. Here's when I'm going to my dance class. Here's when I'm going to my yoga class. And then who can I invite to show up so that when I'm like, I don't want to, I'm like, oh, well, so-and-so said they're already going to be there. So I will be there. Yeah. I'll be there. I'll be on the dance floor. I'll see you.
That's so good. That's why CrossFit works for me, because you have to sign up for the class. If you don't show up for the class you sign up for, you get a notice saying, hey, where were you? Kind of like a slap on the wrist. And then there's coaches expecting you to show up.
Yeah.
That's why it works for me. If it was just the gym, I'd be like, meh.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go. Maybe I'll do a couple back squats.
Yeah. There's something about calendaring that, where my husband, he just knows, like he moves his body every day and he does jujitsu, but then he'll just show up at the gym. And he's like, oh, if I didn't do it in the morning, then I'll do it in the afternoon. I wish I had that natural draw, but I don't. So I have to have more anchors of support.
So I'm the same way, because my husband Dan is like, oh, I have to do 2 workouts today, whatever. He was training for Ironman. If he didn't get it done in the morning, he'll get it done sometime in the afternoon. And I'd be like, when's that sometime? No. Yeah. Oh my God, where is it?
Yeah, totally.
It's not in my calendar. And I do not work out in the afternoon. I'm not an afternoon worker outer. It does not work for me.
Oh, that's so interesting. For me, I'm more late afternoon, evening. It helps me kind of transfer from my work brain, but I'm most alive and engaged with my work in the morning.
Me too.
5 a.m. to 1 p.m. I'm like hyper focused. And then after that, I lose steam. But if I work out, there's a whole wind up that happens for me in the morning my context switching after working out in the morning is intense. So
like half the day.
yeah. And I'm like, no, okay, now it's 1 and now the day is over.
Yeah. I usually do like noon classes, which works for me.
Oh, that's great. I could totally get behind a noon class. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, noon's fun. Okay, so a couple more questions. You talk about building a support squad, which I love this because I feel like it's also reflective of my husband's book that's coming out, Buy Back Your Time. Can you tell me what that is and what your support system looks like?
Yeah. So the support squad is a very holistic support system. And this is different than having your dream team, which is supporting you with logistical support and getting your time back. These are people that are supporting you emotionally, intellectually, spiritually even, but really having people that you can lean on, because we know the journey of entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur for 14 years, and there's highs and there's also super low lows, and we need people to lean on in those seasons. So I divided into 3 categories. The first one is your peers and colleagues. These are people that you are masterminding with, your parallel playmates, that you're on the same journey at the same time, facing very similar struggles, and you're able to just celebrate each other, to encourage each other, to share resources and insights. For me, I have so many mastermind groups that I'm a part of because I'm a verbal processor. I'm also a social introvert. So I love intimate community that I can go really deep with, who knows my heart and my values really well. And then the next category is mentors and advisors. So these are your coaches, your consultants, people you can strategize with. And if you're in a startup phase, a lot of times you have mentors from afar, where you're just reading them in a book, you're listening to a podcast, you're checking out a free webinar, whatever that is. So those people that you can lean on who are years ahead of you to help you save time, to give you feedback and insights. So that piece I think is really important, especially as we're trying to up level and continually grow. And then the third category is really having a safe space to be seen and heard. And these are your life coaches, your therapist, and I have both. And something that I think is really important, especially as a seasoned entrepreneur, we're going to face emotional blocks. Sometimes when we're procrastinating or we're resisting or we're avoiding, we're in that avoidance stage of fear, it's usually an emotional block that's holding you back because you're smart. You know the strategy, you know the next steps you need to take. So what isn't being said? What emotion isn't being tended to and acknowledged? Actually, during my book writing process with the retreats, because I was like, if I go into these hotels, what if I just turn this into a spa vacation and I don't actually work on my book? So I would have calls with my life coach in the morning each day of my retreats to basically process anything that I felt was falling apart on the page, or I felt a little torn or stuck or confused, to kind of work that out loud before I got into writing. Because it's like, if I'm not writing or if I'm not doing the thing that I said I was going to do, why am I not doing it? And most of the times it's an emotion that needs to be acknowledged and explored and tended to. And so really that's the holistic way of a support squad. It's not just your BFFs. It's not just your coaches and mentors. It's really the whole picture of having that support. And I think when we're operating at this high level of ambition, creativity, output, double duty of business and home life, we need a lot of support mechanisms in place to hold us as we grow.
Oh, I know I could use this the other day. Like, I have my people, but not the right people in the right places.
Yeah.
An example is, we could go really deep on this, but
let's go deep.
Surface level is the way that I see it when it comes to like racism, misogyny, you name it. My perspective is, if you see something, say something. If you have the courage and the vulnerability to do it, call them out. Maybe you're wrong. That's okay. You'll be corrected. And so I saw something and I said something publicly. And then it just went this whole like backlash thing where I asked a question about what it could be, cultural appropriation. And they're like, oh, I don't believe in that term. I believe that's what people made up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, look around the room. Everything you see and think is made up. So I don't know what you mean by that. And then it just got worse and worse. And so finally I was like, oh my gosh, I need to call on somebody to ask them if I approached this well. But I don't want to imply to my friends who might be Indigenous, that they have this responsibility now, this heavy weight to answer this question for me. So maybe they're not the right people. And I was like, who do I talk to? I don't have that person. I don't have that support squad to help guide me through this because I know what was being said was wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this person?
Yeah.
So it's so important to have those people because in those moments, it's like you need them. A text message, a phone call, an email, whatever it is.
Yes.
Keep you in line.
And also when you are public facing, and we have these platforms and a space to share our voices, our truth, and what we're observing, there's also a responsibility to be aware of all the things that are happening, the nuances, and how to make it a safe place for people. And you need safe spaces to say your messy, unfiltered truth, to process and be real and honest with yourself, and then how to tend and be in a caring space in the public as well. Jen Kem and I went to go see Michelle Obama speak on her The Light We Carry tour in San Francisco just last weekend. And she was talking about what she calls her support squad is the kitchen table inside her book. And she's like, yeah, there's things that I need to say and talk about that I would never say publicly. Like I have a responsibility of things that I need to, but she has a place to vent, to express, to strategize, to come up with those things and then coming back into the world. So I think that's a great example of identifying like, oh, I don't have someone I can lean on right now to ask that question. And then it's like, oh, that's a missing puzzle piece in my support squad. So now let me go reach out and find who is this person for me and how can I complete that part of my support squad? I love that.
And I did. I reached out to a couple people that I know would be, because I know their values would be probably the most unbiased, who would just call me out on something that I may have said wrong or approached it wrong, but also would be like, hey, maybe you should look at it from their perspective. Because when you're in those moments, you're like, no, I'm right, they're wrong. I don't want to see it from their perspective. Well,
there's defensiveness that can happen in kind of protecting your 100%. Truth. And also looking to make sure that you're leaning into people that are seasoned and well-versed. Even for my book with She Builds, I had a cultural sensitivity read done. I'm Black, Chinese, white, and I still have blind spots. I still have unconscious biases that could cause harm to people that I'm not aware of, or even from body image perspective and just all of those things. So it was really helpful for me and also triggering because I was like, oh, I didn't know. Oh, I'm so sorry. But to do the research and to learn. And I want to be more inclusive because sometimes if we don't think about the people that are reading or how we could be causing harm, not intentionally, but still it can shut them down to not receive the whole message. And so if I have the resources and I'm willing to take the time to see us have a spotlight shined on my blind spots, I want to learn and I want to grow. And I know I didn't get it all right or perfect, even with having a cultural sensitivity reader. There's still going to be pieces, but I'm willing to learn and to grow in that. And that's what I love about people who allow themselves to be vulnerable, to be honest in public, but also be messy and own their side of the street of, I got it wrong. I didn't even know. I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. And I'm learning and I'm growing right now too.
Yes. The apology. I remember I apologized to one guy who was offended by me just asking a question if maybe this was not appropriate. It was insensitive. And then it was this whole thing about virtue signaling. I'm like, okay. And then I asked why. And then he explained his side of the story. And I'm like, but you're the person thought I was defending. So I don't understand. And I said, oh, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. I'm learning. I'll do better next time. And then he sent me a YouTube link about this comedian saying, you offended me and I don't care if you offended me. It's my decision to be offended. So you can screw off. And I'm like, what is going on here? Oh my God. But for me, I'm glad that I apologized because I'm like, we don't know people's stories. We don't know their experiences and their thoughts and what they lived through. And so I think it's just being open to the reality that most of us are trying to do our best.
Yeah.
In whatever it is we're doing. And we're going to be wrong a lot. Yeah. And we have to be okay with being wrong. But not even just accepting the failure, but also accepting the responsibility on how you're going to do better next time.
Yeah. And there's a vulnerability and like embarrassment and like, oh my goodness, I got it wrong. And then there's some people who are like, I don't care. And that's their truth. That's their values, and humans. Being human is messy.
Just human. We try. Okay, this is amazing. I have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that for you?
For me, being a wild woman is being able to unlock my creativity, my artistry, my creative expression. I feel so lit up, wild, sensual, connected, engaged when I really tap into the artist within. And that's something that I feel that I really stepped into in even my website rebrand and She Builds, is allowing myself to be an artist first and a business owner second, to not trying to fall into the lines of what everyone else is doing, but allowing myself to just be that wild, fully expressed, embodied, dancing, even if I don't think I'm that great of a dancer, but just being so in my body, so tuned in to what turns me on. I was listening to Esther Perel talk on We Can Do Hard Things podcast. And she was talking about, how do you turn yourself on? How do you turn yourself off? Instead of putting that responsibility on other people of, you turn me on when you do this. I get turned on when you do that. So for me, being that wild woman is being connected to your own capacity for pleasure and receiving, and really in that place of power of like, how do I turn myself on? Yeah. And then what are the ways that I turn myself off? So to me, it's like really being connected in relationship with yourself, of that you have a lot of personal responsibility and power to be that embodied wild woman.
And by default, you end up turning everyone else on.
Yes. Because, yes, it's so true.
Yes. The most turny-on-y thing is a woman who is embracing her full confidence, her full self.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah. And I'm learning it in business and in the bedroom. So it's great.
Yeah, all right. So if listeners want to go and find you online, where can they go?
Yes. So if you are an Audible listener, you can go to shebuilds.com/audible. That's if you want to kind of soak up She Builds, or go to shebuilds.com for all the different links to get the copy of the book. And follow me at Jadah Sellner, Jadah like Prada. So that's JADAHSELLNER, and JadahSellner.com. And just super excited to connect and catch up with you, Renee. I feel like we could keep this conversation going and going.
Oh, we're only on chapter 1. We still have 12
more chapters.
No, go get her book. I've only to this date have read the first 17 pages, but I'm enthralled by the story. It's captivating. And thank you so much for sharing these deep, dark secrets of those days that were tough for you. I'm sure you'll inspire so many. Jadah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Renee.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time: the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.